My name is Merrill Dubrow, CEO of Mark Research. I'm a 35-year veteran of the research and insights community and the host of our podcast, On the Mark. On the Mark is focusing on executives and thought leaders in the world, sharing their insights, strategies, and personal experiences. I promise this podcast will be filled with tough, pointed questions and real, insightful, and emotional answers. Today's guest is my longtime friend, VP of Consumer Insights at McDonald's, Jami Guthrie. Jami, welcome to the On the Mark podcast.
Thank you, Merrill. Happy to be part of it.
Thanks. All right, let's get into it, Jami. So can you just describe for our listeners your current position and the staff that report into you and their roles?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm the Vice President of Consumer Insights and Analytics at McDonald's, North America. We have about 20 to 25 staff currently on the team, and it's broken out in kind of three different pods. One is more of a traditional consumer insights team, working on menu innovation and advertising development and understanding competition. Another piece of the team is more on performance learning, so looking in market of what's working and what's not, so we can do more of what is and less of what isn't. So more of the consumer analytics and market mix modeling and that sort of thing. And then the third piece of the team is kind of way further upstream. We call it foundational insights. So it's, understanding the opportunities that are out there for growth and making sure that we're pointing the organization in that direction. So those are the three different pods.
Oh, that's great. So when you're thinking about it, and I think you said you have 25 staff, is that what you said?
Yep.
Okay. So, and I assume you're going to be adding to that in 2020 and beyond? That's the plan?
Yeah. We're going to be growing, in the neighborhood of, 15, 20%, depending on the piece of the team, but yes. Yep.
Right. So that's adding, if you have 25, that's average, adding another 5 folks.
Yep.
So let's do a couple things. What, in your opinion, Jami, what makes a great researcher?
That's a great question. So, for me, there has to be just a natural curiosity about consumer behavior. So why did someone pick a Pepsi versus a Coke? Why did they decide to go out to lunch today versus stay in? And if that natural curiosity is there, I think it's difficult to kind of drive curiosity, in the business place. So I think that's first and foremost, that has to be present. And then secondly, it's like visible and vocal thought leadership. There's lots of people in the industry that have great technical skill. There's lots of people in the industry that can project manage and get things to the system on time, on budget, with a high quality output. But to be able to drive it into the organization, teach it so people take action upon it, is something that we look for. And quite honestly, that's just hard to teach. People, either have great influencing skills and the ability to influence, or not. It's hard to teach that inside of a company like this.
Okay, and so the 5 folks that you're going to add to your team in 2020. Are you looking for a little bit different skill sets? I mean, obviously, social media is more prevalent than it was 5, 7, 10 years ago. Having a marketing angle to your background, that may not be something that you had hired on as well 5, 7 years ago. Are you hiring different skills or looking for different skills to add to the team?
Yeah, I think when you look across the team, and it might not be the 5 new spots necessarily, but when you look across the team, we're trying to have a better mix of kind of analytic skills, the ability to kind of go into either our first party data sets or our data sets and really mine that for knowledge. As you might imagine, a company like McDonald's sits on a ton of data from a variety of different sources, and one of the challenges is just being able to mine through that either ourselves or with our partners. So that's one skill set we're making sure that we're bringing in, and the other one is more the rise of the social sciences, again, kind of in business. So psychology, sociology, but the behavioral sciences, making sure that we're really understanding how people are behaving in the marketplace, rather than just focused on attitudes. So there's a mix between our internal staff that we're doing that, and certainly our external partners that we're working with as well.
Now I know you brought up Coke a few minutes ago, and I know you worked at Pepsi. early in your career. Are you a Pepsi guy or a Coke guy? Because I'm a Coke guy. I'm a Coke guy.
Yes, I do.
But which one are you?
I'm still a Pepsi guy. I worked for the company. I was there a total of 9 years, and it was about half and half as a Quaker Oats company before the acquisition, and then 4.5 years post the acquisition. And it was just kind of that preference was beaten into me early on, and now it's actually a consumer preference. Actually, when I left the company, I still always choose a Pepsi when I had a choice.
There's an interesting story that you shared with me, and I think you should share it with the listeners because it's very, very, very shocking to me and interesting, which is I am really particular on my soda. I only drink Coke, and I like it out of a 16.9 or 20 ounce plastic bottle. I don't like it out of a can. I don't like fountain drinks. And I say that, but I will drink once in a while a fountain drink from Coke because it just seems to be a little bit different and it seems to be a little bit better. Why is that?
Yeah, so here at McDonald's, we put a lot of focus on the quality of the soft drinks or beverages that we sell, and we're one of our largest partners is the Coca-Cola company, which is the largest beverage company in the world. And so between the work that we've done over the years together, we have just mastered the formula. Temperature and formula of what comes out of those fountain machines, and those fountain machines are controlled by Coca-Cola, and so they're in there on a monthly basis, making sure that the formula is dead on in terms of what's coming out of there. The machines are working and clean, and we routinely hear, if you go out and Google, best Diet Coke or best Coca-Cola fountain drink, you'll see tons and comments out in the Twitter sphere about McDonald's Coca-Cola.
So you've been there a year or a little over a year. You probably just celebrated 13-month anniversary roughly?
Yep, 13 months. Yep, good memory.
What's your most important learning about the business in the past 13 months?
I worked for 25 years or so in the CPG industry, and there's tons of things that I learned on that side, and there's lots of challenges that industry faces. But the biggest change coming to McDonald's has been working in a franchisee model. It's a challenge, and it's, I think, also a strength of the system. So, it's hard enough in the kinds of jobs that we have to kind of align an organization around, a direction or a launch or something that we want to do. But then when you have to align a franchisee system of 1,800 individual owners to that same initiative, it takes a little bit of time, and it takes some very strong storytelling and influencing skills to be able to kind of turn a ship of this big. So certainly a challenge from an internal alignment standpoint, but I also think it's the power of the system that McDonald's has built here, is that you have a big corporate center that is kind of looking across the business and seeing the kind of the themes that are in the marketplace. And then you have our 1,800 individual owner-operators out in the marketplace interacting with our customers each and every day and seeing things at a highly localized level and feeding that back to the corporation. So I think that's really the magic of what Ray Kroc built here back in the 50s is, the ability to see the big picture, but also be community and local based with how we go to market.
When you were a kid, did you ever work in a McDonald's?
I never did, but the stat is that 1 out of every 8 U.S. adults have worked at a McDonald's at one point or another.
Wow,
it's a stunning number.
Okay, so let's stay with the numbers because I'm a numbers guy, as you know. So why don't you stagger us a little bit with regard to some of the numbers in terms of that we would be surprised? Because you're what? How big is the company now? Is it $20 billion? How big is it?
Yeah, so globally we're over $90 billion. So, massive company. But when you kind of break it down in kind of consumer terms, you start to understand the reach of the business. So, and I'll just give you a few numbers. So, in any given month, 44% of the U.S. population will roll through a McDonald's at least once. On a quarterly basis, that number is 70%. And then on an annual basis, it's high 80s. 88% of the population will visit McDonald's at least a month. So one of the toughest jobs I have as the head of the consumer insights group is when people ask, like, who's your target? It's literally everybody. You can just kind of look outside, and at one point or another, everybody's going to come into a McDonald's at one point or another. So it's a massive reach business, and even though we have that kind of reach on a monthly basis, you still get 81% of the population going out to any QSR or quick service restaurant at least once a month. So we're only getting about half of the people on a monthly basis that's going out. So still a ton of room for us to grow.
Are you doing, or can you talk about geotargeting? Are you using that as a strategy around lunchtime or breakfast time?
Yeah, you see a lot of the world of marketing has become digitized. You see kind of this race for people to companies to get first-party data, because once you have first-party data, you're able to do more one-to-one kind of personalized marketing, both from a messaging standpoint, and then some companies are also using it kind of time of day as well. Our model and some of our strength historically has just been able to blast the airwaves, because we do have that broad penetration. So we can still do things like out of home and radio and even TV advertising given our scale, and it still makes a lot of sense from a reach perspective, and also financially it's quite attractive. But yeah, as with the other companies, we're playing around with a lot of the digital tools as well to see if we can get a better return on those.
That's interesting. So when you look back at your career, you've got a very interesting pool of companies that you've worked for. I mean, I would argue Millword Brown, Pepsi, Wrigley, SCJ, McDonald's. I'm not sure there's a better five out there. I mean, maybe P&G could be slip in as well. But I mean, it's a really impressive background. And there's always a debate, Jami, that, is it better to start your career on the supplier side and then go client? Or is it better to start your career on the client side and then go to the vendor side, right? Do you have an opinion of that? Because obviously you went supplier and then went client. Which is easier if you had to put a stake in the ground?
Yeah, so for at least the time that I was coming out, it was easier for me coming out of undergrad to make my way onto the supplier side. And I had, several mentors and a few college professors that had kind of given me that advice. And, I certainly found that to be true. So coming out of undergrad, I looked at a variety of the big market research suppliers that were out there. And, I ended up at Millword Brown for about 3.5, 4 years. And it was a wonderful experience, and it was exactly what I wanted to do at the time. I got not only able to learn the nuts and bolts of the research industry, how to create a questionnaire, how does the coding process work, the whole tabulation side, and then eventually, like how do you analyze a set of data? As a 22-year-old, you don't get that many reps at that in college. So the functional side of that I thought was outstanding. The other thing that was really valuable to me is I had the opportunity to take a peek inside of a lot of different clients that I worked across. And that ranged from, Philips Electronics, public supermarkets, McDonald's Corporation was one of my early businesses that I worked on, Ford Motor Company, a whole host of things. And what I quickly realized was that the role of insights, or the role of research inside of manufacturer organizations, there is a wide array, all the way from more of a technical function that kind of just did the work, all the way through places that were, much more about strategy and consulting and actually had the technical expertise, but had a stronger voice in the organization. And that gave me a really good sense of the kind of place that I wanted to go into then later in my career. So not sure if I answered your question directly, but that's the path that I kind of took, and it was just easier for me then to get into the client side of the business once I had my feet wet in the industry. And I just at that point I had a lot more contacts to figure out what it is I wanted to do.
So let's stay with your career for a second. I'm going to give you a do-over. You have to do something different, okay? What would it be? What change would you make? I mean, you've had an amazing career. If we forced you that you had to change something, what would it be?
Yeah, it's an easy one. I would go work internationally. So when I left, so I was part of Quaker PepsiCo for 9 years, about half and half, after the acquisition that Pepsi bought Quaker. And the reason why I went to the Wrigley company is I really wanted to get international or global experience. And I did in spades. It was fantastic, but it was all out of Chicago. And, I was just fortunate that Wrigley kind of managed the business where I could have a global role, people reporting to me from around the globe and that kind of staff and structure, but do so out of Chicago. And so it was a great time. I look back on that and it's what I wanted, and it was fantastic. But if I could do it over, I would actually do a role like that where I'm sitting in a different country. And it's one part just for myself to acclimate in a different area from a professional and business standpoint. And it's another just from a family standpoint as well. To be able to, I think, live in a different culture in a different place is it's just mind expanding and eye opening. And if I were to do it over again, I would do it. I would do that for sure.
It's interesting because my answer would be the same. The mistake that I made, or if I had a do-over, and I've enjoyed my career immensely, only working for 7 companies, as I said, but I would work overseas. I think that trying to get integrated in a company with an international spin to it and making your mark, I think there's so many learnings and so many takeaways that I just didn't have the opportunity to do it. That would be mine as well. So it's interesting. Who's helped you along the way? I know you mentioned earlier mentors. Can you name like 2 or 3 mentors that helped shape your career along the way? And maybe after you left them, they meant more to you because you got a little more maturity and you looked back and realized they were really helping your career with perhaps at the time you didn't realize that.
Yeah, for sure. And the one I'll name 2 people kind of early in my career and then later in my career. So the first one was a gentleman named Scott Hughes, who was at the time a research director at the Quaker Oats Company when I was at Millword Brown. And it was funny how it all kind of came about. I was filling in on the Quaker account for a big presentation on like how their hot cereal season was performing or something like that. And I walk into this meeting. I'm a really junior guy. I help prepare all the decks, and I just kind of sit in the back row with my mouth zipped during the presentation as other people from Millward Brown shared it. And I watched this very young insights person on the Quaker side completely grab the learning that's coming out from our side, spinning it in the room so it made sense in context of the business and the other learning that they had, and kind of steering the thinking and the implications kind of on the spot. And I don't know how old he was at the time. He looked like he was in his late 20s, and he's got all these people, executives, marketing executives in their 40s, completely eating out of his hand. And it was right then I was like, you know what? I want to go to the client side, and I want to do that. Funny thing is, you flash forward 2 years, I interviewed at the Quaker Oats Company, and I started working for Scott. And just kind of fell that way. And he's just been a role model for my whole career in terms of how he manages people, in terms of how he views the role of the function, and then the impact that he ends up having inside of an organization. He looks much more like a Bain or a McKinsey or a BCG consultant in terms of the impact he has inside of an organization, rather than quote unquote just a researcher. So I've always modeled my entire career. I've modeled myself after him. The second person is a great leader that I met about probably 7 years ago now, named Salman Amin. And Salman was the chief operating officer of SC Johnson, which is a private company in Wisconsin. And he really came to SCJ from Pepsi. He came from Pepsi to drive a kind of a marketing sophistication and a business sophistication inside of what had been a fairly sleepy company for a period of time in a lot of sleepy categories. And what Salman taught me, more than anything else, it's kind of like the Mike Ditka quote, like you get in life what you tolerate. Salman had a really, really high bar for himself and the team around him. And because of that, he just pushed that everything that he did, it was literally the best work that would come out. And it just, I watched him, set a tone inside of an organization, how to do that for himself, how to do that for his direct team, and how to do that for a very large CPG. And I just felt, every single day I was learning from him, even though I was, pretty deep into my career at that point. He's probably one of the best managers I've ever had.
Okay, one last question. With May graduation being about 4 months away, how about one or two pieces of advice to the new graduates who might want to come into the insights world? Any advice that you'd like to leave with them?
Yeah, for sure. And I have a freshman in college and a junior in high school. So they don't listen to me very much, but yeah, I'm happy to put it on the podcast. So, I do see the rise of the social sciences kind of coming back into business and doing so in a big way. And my daughter wants to get into business. She's talked about marketing. And my encouragement to her is to make sure to look around into things like psychology. Make sure she's looking around at things like neuroscience and some of the advances there and some of the degrees that are now starting to come out. And I think marketing is going to be some interesting blend. Marketing research is going to be some interesting blend between data science and analytics, the social sciences, neuro and psychology, and then kind of a traditional, marketing degree. And so finding programs that focus in on that, I think will set people up well, kind of jump out of the industry and join the industry. The other area that I just find interesting too is all the Ehrenberg Bass stuff by Aaron Sharp. And I know that sometimes he can be a little bit too much for some people. But when you take a look at like what they're doing with data science and looking at the behavior themes that they see across categories, I think there's just some really, really interesting stuff that's starting to change the minds of how we used to think about marketing towards attitudes and perceptions and all that sort of stuff, and really focusing on behavior. So I would encourage people to kind of pick up Byron's book, How Brands Grow, and then if they're going into college or their MBAs, to start thinking a little bit more about the social sciences.
Jami, thanks again for your time today. You've been listening to Jami Guthrie, Vice President of Consumer Insights at McDonald's, on the On the Mark podcast. Jami, great job. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Merrill. All right, bye-bye.